Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A after the movie Like a Woman. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I love this one and feel pretty passionate about the topic. I'm Wendy Edson. I'm the artistic director of the SLO Film Fest. And we would like to thank you for joining us. We want to remind you to vote for the film. It's actually eligible for an audience award. So please remember to vote. And then tell your friends about it if you liked it. We would like to thank the sponsor of this film, which is the Women's Legacy Fund, perfect sponsor for this film. And they are a program of the Community Foundation of San Luis Obispo County. So thank you very much to them for all their loyal support over the many years. I'm excited to have quite a big group with us today. And I'm going to highlight a few people, and one of them is our director, it's not our director, the director of the film, Gail Mooney. Just put your hand up there, Gail, if you would, and welcome. And you are calling in from, just remind me where you are.
Jersey, Morris County, New Jersey.
You're in New Jersey, okay. And we have quite an eclectic mix of locations here today. So I'm gonna just mention where people are calling in from. And this is kind of the beauty of doing a virtual festival, to be honest with you. We can't all be in person. However, we can involve a lot of people in a whole different way. So I'm kind of excited about that because I'm actually in Nova Scotia right now. So, we're covering a lot of the continent. We also have Shonda Warner here, and she is actually in the movie and is the investor farmer featured in the movie and calling in from close to Portland, Oregon. Shonda, welcome.
Thank you.
And Wendy Crockett is also featured in the movie. She's a motorcycle endurance competitor and calling in from Aguas Calientes, Mexico. So welcome, Wendy.
Thanks for having me.
And then we also, I just have to point out someone I know very well, and that's Sky Bergman, who is in San Luis Obispo and is a wonderful photographer turned filmmaker, and made a beautiful movie called Lives Well Lived, and became friends with Gail at our 2012, I think it was, festival, when we had Gail's movie Opening Our Eyes. So love to see those connections being made, and I'm glad you guys are still staying in touch. And Sky was instrumental in the making of this movie, which we'll get to in a sec. So obviously, Gail, you love the topic of strong women doing interesting things, because Opening Our Eyes was very much about that, and I loved it so much. So I just want to start with you. And by the way, everybody else here has kindly called in because they love the movie, and they may very well have some very good questions. So I'm going to try to talk fast so we can get to some other people's questions, and maybe Gail can explain better who some of them are. Anyway, I just feel like you must have had some goals when you started out to make this movie, Gail. Do you feel like, what were they, and do you feel like you succeeded?
Well, as a woman working in a profession that was male dominated most of my life, and being one of the few women at the table, I knew the subject well. And they say, tell a story about what you know. So this was something I knew well. And I figured the time was to find out if things had changed in the 30 plus years I've been in business, and how much. And so I sought out different women in other professions. and there has been change. It's just been extremely slow.
Right.
Or it has seemed like it's been slow anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, unfortunately.
But Wendy and Shonda are younger than me, so they could probably speak to that part of it as well.
Yeah, and that was my next question, was just to ask Shonda and Wendy separately to just briefly explain what you do, and then how you connected with Gail and for this movie, and what was that like to participate in a documentary about strong, independent women doing unusual things.
Wendy, why don't you have a go?
All right.
So I am a motorcycle mechanic. I owned a motorcycle shop in Central California, not far from SLO, for about 15 years. And I do, as you said, motorcycle endurance competitions. So I've been doing that for 10, 12 years. And this past 2019, I became the first woman ever to win the 11-day, 11,000-mile Iron Butt Rally. And so in the course of doing that, it has opened up a lot of really interesting opportunities. It's one of those things that seems so far out there that a lot of people can't wrap their mind around doing something like that. So it's very, very interesting to people even outside of the motorcycle community. And then even more so because I'm a woman out there doing it myself. So Gail had reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in taking part in the documentary, and yeah, it was great fun.
How long did you shoot the sequence with?
Probably over the course of
3 or 4
4
days.
or 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
several.
We mixed in weather and Wendy's work schedule and all the above and made it happen. And had some great weather, so we were lucky. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it is a great part of the film. I loved that part, and very unusual. Shonda, what is your story?
Sorry.
She's got a lot of them.
3 minutes.
Gail? My story is maybe more to, I don't know, slightly more common, maybe not that much more common, but the combination is a weird kind of thing. And so I farm and grew up farming and was a grain trader out of university and all sorts of things like that. And really probably the only woman grain trader that around, or there was maybe 2 or 3 of us in the United States at the time. And that was in the early 80s. And then I was working for a company that got me trading financial instruments. Those sound like very different things, but they're really not that different. And so all of a sudden I spun off from, what's a bond look like? Well, it's a truck of corn. You buy a truck of corn, you hedge it with futures. You buy a bond, you hedge it with futures. And all of a sudden I found myself in the kind of the middle of, London and Tokyo and the Wall Street thing and the hedge fund thing and all sorts of crazy stuff. And after doing that for a few years, I decided that I didn't like a lot of the financial craziness that I saw, and that I thought that people should look at agriculture. So I took all of this and all of that, put those 2 things together, and have a business where I farm. And sometimes I do it for teachers' pension funds or firemen or police pension funds or other kind of people who don't want to farm directly themselves, but might want the diversity or benefits from farming. And so I, out of the frying pan and back into the fire, I think I've spent my entire career as usually the only woman in the room, and one of the very few female farmers, sort of scale farmers. And we farm all over the United States, all sorts of different interesting things. And I've known Gail for a number of years, and she said, I'm doing this wacky film, and would you be interested? And I thought, sure.
We met in Mississippi. I was doing a small film on the Delta blues musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And Shonda and I actually met on a plantation down there. So
about 20 years ago, Gail?
At least.
Probably. Yeah, at least.
At least.
Long time ago.
I don't know. Everything's a blur of time with COVID with me. I'm glad I remembered this,
Me too.
That's awful.
Well, you also included some people in San Luis Obispo, and that surprised me, to be honest with you. But there's a couple of people at Cal Poly, our major university, and with that
connection.
Sky helped connect you with them, or?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Sky, you want to say a few words about how that happened?
Well, I mean, I think Gail was telling me about this amazing project that she was working on, and I started thinking about women that I knew out here that I thought would be really great for her to connect with. And you know, I feel really fortunate that Gail came out, and it was really, you know, what a wonderful thing. It's always a gift to be able to help other filmmakers and kind of that nice cycle of giving and receiving. And so I felt really lucky that we were able to make that happen.
Yeah, me too. That really sort of gave it a sort of a, I don't know, a connected feel to our festival in our town. So it was a nice touch. I'm going to just open it up to a few people if anyone has any specific questions about anything in the film. This is like a real screening where we actually do a Q&A like this. I'm open to anybody asking a question at this point. Yes, Charles.
I just wrote it, but Gail, what if anything was the greatest challenge in getting this film done? It seemed like so much to coordinate.
Well, the first one's always the hardest one, you know, because you have to build a little track record, you know, to convince other people I have found. And that actually wasn't the case in this film, because the first story I shot actually didn't even make the film. When I was dealing with a professional editor, she suggested I cut a couple pieces out, not because they weren't good, but because they didn't stick to the message. And I have great awe for all the roles that people play in filmmaking, as opposed to still photographers that are more loners. So that's always something that's hard to get used to, but it's always welcome to get that other perspective. So that probably doesn't answer your question. I can answer better what was the most interesting parts. And the most interesting thing for me to be a photographer or a filmmaker is because it gives me access to all kinds of cool things. Like I rode the Goodyear blimp, you know, stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, that I know, I was envious. Actually, I would love to do that.
I didn't get on the back of Wendy's motorcycle though. I was tempted. I wish I'd asked her if I could do that.
Anyone else have any? Yes, Hillary.
How long did the filming take? The cinematography was just beautiful.
Oh, thanks. Well, I really stuck with it the last 2 years, but to really be fair to when I started, I want to say 2015, late 2016, I started making these little one-off stories. And that's when Sky said I should really flesh this out into a feature. So that's when I knew the last couple of years I had to ramp up some more production on a couple stories, and I did that, and I was lucky. I kind of squeaked that in before COVID. But when I was finished with the rough cut, that's when everybody went into quarantine, and that was like right when I wanted to come out of the editing cave, and like everybody went that way, you know. So that's when I decided to literally take it on the road, and I was kind of like Burt Lancaster bringing in the circus, only I had my film and showed it in people's backyards. So it kept me sane last summer.
I have to say, it really got me thinking, you know, because I was post Title IX, and, you know, it just really got me thinking. And a lot of my daughter's 21, and a lot of her friends are science and engineering people, which is great, you know, 21-year-olds, and they're all girls going into science and engineering. So it's really got me thinking a lot.
Yeah, that's great, because Deb Larson, one of the Cal Poly professors, she's was in engineering, or she is an engineer, and she spoke brilliantly to that. And I love that piece for that reason. You know?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and particularly interesting to me because I made a movie called Real Men Knit about, I think I was telling you, Gail, it's about men who knit. And, you know, it's just an interesting way to think that why are we sort of boxed into these ideas that this is this is something men do and this is something women do. And I like what you were saying earlier today, that that there's no reason to make it a negative thing. Just do what you want to do, and go out and do it. And and you know, hopefully it doesn't become too much of a negative thing. But I guess I have to ask Wendy, you know, what kind of razzing or difficulty did you go through, or did you just find that there was more support than you expected?
In terms of the long distance riding, it's great. There's no women's class. There's no there's no hard times given to women. I mean, we are all independent competitors, but we're just as likely to be out. You know, how many times I couldn't tell you, guys have come to me and said, there's a problem with my bike before a rally. Can you help me fix it? And there's no embarrassment, you know, regarding that. But it was a very, very different story as a female mechanic. And even today, it is really interesting. And you have a lot of people that are just, they say amazingly rude things, and then they kind of take a breath and they're like, okay, well, I didn't really mean it that way, but it's really surprising to see a female mechanic. You know, they're usually embarrassed, but I tell you what, I had very recently somebody tell me, I had interviewed for a job in a service department, and they said, well, that's cute and all, but we don't want a woman in our service department. It'll kind of screw up our boys club we got back here, and thanks, but no thanks. So it really does. It's a very interesting dynamic all the time. My point of view is, thank you for letting me know you're a jerk. I would not like to be employed by you anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is definitely, I hope by the time my daughter, and we're in Mexico, my daughter and I have been on a sidecar trip that was headed to South America, which got curtailed by the pandemic. But I hope by the time she is ready to go out on her own, it doesn't occur to her that there are things that she can or cannot do because she's a girl.
Right. And the more role models, the better.
By the way, Wendy's, I noticed Mike, your significant other's online, and he did the great drone footage of Wendy's segment. So I want to give him a shout out. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Great job. Beautiful.
Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun shooting that footage.
I bet. Must have been challenging too.
Yes, it was. That was really my first, you know, other than just practicing a little bit. That was my first shoot with that drone. So it was a challenge, but I think it definitely worked out great.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to wrap it up pretty soon, but does anyone else have any other questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, I've raised my hand. My name is Jeff Shiwi, and I've known Gail on and off, I think, for since Photo Expo a couple of decades ago. I'm not sure. But Wendy, I got a big kick out of you. I actually met Mike Kneebone, and I was going to do a 1K in 24 hours, and I only got 950 miles, so I feel a little bit depressed. But I used to ride motorcycle. I don't anymore. But the fact that you won that's pretty impressive. If anybody doesn't know what it's like to spend, I don't know how many hours in a row on a motorcycle, it's a real kind of Zen Buddhist feeling that you get in there. I love long distance riding and travel out west. I used to ride my motorcycle out to Santa Fe when I went out to teach workshops, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much to all of you for joining, and thank you, Gail, for making another wonderful film. And please keep us posted on any future endeavors. I'm sure you need to take a little bit of a break, but I'm excited to see what you do next.
All right. Wish I was in California right now. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.